Hello and welcome to Literati, the space where words matter, where memory meets imagination, and where literature is not just about reading, but is also lived. Today we are honored to seat with a writer whose name carries history, revolution, and vision. Mukoma is a poet, is a novelist, an academic, and thinker, and he joins us on the program today. Now, my guest is the son of the legendary Kenyan writer and activist Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. But he has carved out a powerful voice all on his own. His poetry collections, which is hauling words at consciousness among them, blaze with both tenderness and fire. His novels, from Nairobi Heat and Black Star Nairobi to Mrs. Shaw, weave together crime fiction, political urgency, memory, and belonging into unforgettable narratives. In his scholarly work, especially The Rise of the African Novel, Politics of Language, Identity, and Ownership, Mukoma interrogates the legacies of colonial languages, the politics of storytelling, and the quest for cultural sovereignty. His more recent writings continue to ask urgent questions, like what it means to be African, diasporic, and global, while never losing sight of the deeply human themes of love, justice, memory, and survival. Beyond the pages, he's also an associate professor of English at Cornell University, United States of America, shaping the next generation of African and global storytellers. His voice resonated across continents, always pushing us to reimagine what it means to write, to resist, and to belong. But this episode carries profound weight. Just weeks or months after his passing of his father, Mukoma reflects with us on his own journey and on the legacy of a father and son that is bound together by literature, by activism, and by the relentless pursuit of freedom. Please help me welcome onto the program, Mukoma wa Ngũgĩ. You're welcome to the program.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you so much for that introduction.
Thank you for accepting to come onto the program.
Yeah, no, but your introduction made me realize I've been busy. No, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I do have to say that you're not the only one who's also said that my introductions are good. I think I should just start writing as well.
No, yeah.
This is very important. I must say that this episode is by far one of the most important ones I would do for Literati for this year. At this crossroads as we are when it comes to Africa, diaspora, literature, finding our voice, identity globally, and also here on the continent. What's most important is one of the persons who have forged that is your father. I must first of all say, our condolences.
Thank you.
And how are you?
Well, I mean, it's been rough for sure, because he passed away in May. And I spent 2 months in Kenya. And no, it's been rough. There's no other way of putting it, right? Because losing a parent, my mother also passed away, right? So I would say even just losing a parent itself, no matter at what age, is just difficult. And and I miss him. I can feel his absence. Yeah.
And we also feel his absence as well. I mean, what he's done is activism. And you have done that scholarly with your work as well, and your need or your work interrogates many of and asks many of those questions, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. What would you like his legacy to ingrain with his passing? What do you want us to take away from that?
It's also the first thing I would say, and I don't know, it's going to sound silly, right? But I hadn't realized how much he meant to the world until he passed away, because for me, he's just my father,
just your daddy.
He's just my father, yeah, and we would have our own little fights, our quick fisticuffs, But I didn't realize just to what extent he has been in people's homes and in people's minds. In terms of the legacy, certainly questions around language, African languages, right? And we need to use our languages more and to give our languages an ecosystem in which they can thrive in. In terms of writing, I think for us as writers, especially for the younger writers, he was very, very patient with words. So I think for the younger writers, if you want to honor him, then write well, right? But more than that, though, is the whole idea of that for him, there was no separation between his writing and his activism. So the whole idea that you can't say decolonize the mind, then you're just chilling. You know what I mean? Right? You know, so for him, he put his ideas into action, right? And that led him into getting detained in 1977,
Yes.
eventually forced him into exile, and so on and so forth, which of course then changes the trajectory of my own life and with my siblings.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'd like to say is that the one gift that he gave me and also my siblings, the one, I call it a gift now because I realize it, is never having to apologize for him. Right, because in Kenya, I've met a lot of people. I'm now my own age, but who came from the dictator side, right? You know, you know, and for them, they carry this guilt about their parents that I'll never have, right? You know, so I would say that just that gift of never having to say, "I'm sorry." For example, I met the daughter of one of the police officers who are responsible for, I don't know, take him to detention, and she carries so much guilt. It's as if she wanted me to forgive her, right? So in terms of his legacy, at least for me, I would say, okay, it sounds like a minimum, but it means a lot to be able to say, in this life, I won't have to apologize for carrying his name.
Right. Away from your father, let's talk about yourself. You are a writer. You have dabbled into poetry, fiction, and also scholarly work with what you're doing with academia. And so there's so many titles to you.
Yeah.
As you advance well into your career, almost more than 20 years, if I'm correct, into your career. How best would you describe yourself now? What title would you give yourself? Are you a writer? Are you a creative? Are you a scholar? Are you a poet? Which is it for you?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that a lot actually in the last few weeks. But I've also been thinking primarily I'm a teacher, right? And I've been thinking about Achebe. I think his essay was "The Novelist as a Teacher," right? So I'm doing a lot of revisiting actually for to that generation. So I would say primarily I'm a teacher because that's what gives me the most joy. Like, when I go somewhere, I want to meet with the young people, and talk with them and engage with them. But then also a teacher who is a student, because then you learn a lot from them. I mean, for example, Gen Z, they have so much wisdom as well that people in my generation, the Gen X, that we can't even imagine.
Right.
So I would say teacher and writer, a teacher and writer. Okay, fine, then I'll add scholar. But I think part of it is the literary tradition I inherited, right? The literary tradition I inherited was you do everything. Right, when you look at Wale Soyinka, it's theater, poetry, activism. I mean, he spent 18 months,
in jail?
In jail when he wrote where the man died comes from.
Yes.
When you look at Achebe, it's a similar thing, fiction, poetry, the African Writers Series, the Heinemann African Writers Series. When you look at my dad, it's theater, scholarly work, and so on and so forth. So for me, I didn't have a choice, right? And part of it is, so I finally got to meet Soyinka actually yesterday, right? And for me that was a great moment. I actually did not know, going back to my father passing away, I did not know I needed that, right? But also I lay a lot of blame on them, right? Because
they just do the work and they go to their caves, they go to their corners of the world.
Not just that, right? But the whole idea of for me, I'm coming from their tradition, right? Yeah, where it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work having to do all those things. But also, I don't think there's any other choice because we're trying to change society. We're trying to change how we look at ourselves. Yeah, and to change the very nature of or to contribute to the very nature of the African literary tradition. So it's just, I would say it's just my tradition.
Would you say your father and his peers are blueprints for what you have, mapped your career to be?
Yeah, they have. But of course, as it happens, each generation will question the previous generation.
What are your questions for the previous generation?
The first one is why they begin, though it's not their fault, but okay, fine. Okay, let me say, okay, so let me put it this way. Okay, the question is, where do we begin African literature or understanding of it with Amos Totiola or Achebe or Ngũgĩ Soyinka when we had this long tradition of writing? For example, early South African writing begins in the 1800s. You have Amharic literature that begins in the 1200s. You have Afro-Arab literature that begins in the 500s. So like why, okay, this topic makes me angry as well, because as a writer, you want to have the long, I don't know, the long
A long
view,
history.
a long history,
More
the
like a
long view.
background view of what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for us then to be writing from a 1960s tradition,
Right.
it's almost like we're cheating our own imaginations.
Ah.
Right? But I would say it's not their fault, because for them then, I mean, they are in the 1950s, 1960s, you know, those were the writers who were there. So maybe that's a problem with African literary scholarship and professors.
Would you blame them when you think about it? Because again, we have to think about the texts that have existed before them. I think for the founding fathers of African literature, or what we refer to as modern African literature, or contemporary African literature, or pre-colonial, post-colonial, were really the text that was available when education, where formal education or Western education was proliferated into Africa.
So I would say we are all to blame, right? We, the readers, me as a professor, right? Because maybe it's the job of actually scholars, you know, to really dig into those questions. But for them, though, I mean, they did realize they were part of the problem because of the 1962 Makerere Conference, where the title of the conference was African Writers of English Expression, right? So I would say they knew what they were doing.
Right.
But I don't think it's intentional. They meant to bury those who came before them, right? So maybe the question is, whose role is it then to make sure the younger writers have this long literary tradition that was just absent for people like me or my generation? But part of it, but as a writer though, as a writer, is painful, right? Because to write from I call it a truncated imagination, right? Yeah, so to work from a truncated imagination, one that doesn't know what existed before it. It also makes me wonder about my writing. Would it be different if I had this organic knowledge of early African writing?
Right. I must say that one of the things you've done with your work is you've sort of carved a niche or carved a genre in the African literature with Nairobi Heat, as well as Black Star Nairobi, bringing a form of crime fiction, which we're going to get into, but first we need to go on a break. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Literati here on New Central Television. My guest is Mukoma wa Ngũgĩ, who is the son of the late Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. I gotta ask, Ngũgĩ, so if your children are going to bear wa Mukoma?
Yeah, no, they are so... You could argue we are very democratic in our naming system. My daughter, who is named after my mother, Nyabura, so her name is Nyabura wa Mukoma. Ah. Yeah, so and then when she has kids.
When she has kids, you're going to be her...
Yeah, but for the firstborn children, they keep carrying the name. For example, my eldest brother is Thiong'o wa Ngũgĩ, and then his eldest son is Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. So
nice.
Okay, fine. There's a form of patriarchy there as well.
Now, finally, you're accepted. Let's go on a break, shall we? When we return this time, we're going to talk about his work entirely, and also carving a niche in the future when it comes to Kenyan literature, African literature, for the next 10 years. You're watching Literati. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at New Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
Welcome back. You're watching Literati here on New Central Television. It's a space where worlds and imagination, as well as legacy and identity, are blending. On this episode, we have the honor and the pleasure to have our guest today, Mukoma wa Ngũgĩ. He is an author, a poet, a writer, and of course a scholar. And he's decided to identify himself as a teacher and a writer, isn't it? That's it. Before the break, we're talking about his legacy, as well as his late father's legacy, who is by far one of the founding fathers of African literature as it concerns the entirety of the continent. And we were talking about his legacy and what it means for you before the break. But let's focus on two of your major works, that I was talking that it has sort of carved a corner when it comes to genre, the African genre, and that's crime fiction. I have to ask, in writing those books, and then in its form, when it started out, were you hoping for it to be political the way it was, or did it just happen in the journey?
Yeah, okay, that's a tough question, actually, right? But let me try, right? Let me try.
Please.
All right, so for me, I got into crime fiction or popular fiction because it was a way of paying respect to actually early African popular or crime fiction writers. Because at some point I realized that when the Shoinkas, the Achebes, when the Ngũgĩs were being sent into jail or detention or exile or killed, as like what happened with Ken Saro-Wiwa, it's actually the popular fiction writers who kept the politics alive in their books.
Right.
So and that's what we read. I mean, you would be having, you go to class, you'd hold a copy of Shakespeare, but in between you have a David Mailu, Major Mwangi, because that's what we are reading. So I can say I wanted to be part of that energy. You know what I mean? Because that's what people are reading, right? And I just wanted to say, okay, let's call it my thank you note, right? To the crime fiction writers from Kenya. All right, I'm also interested in questions of blackness, the questions of African and African Americans, because I was born in the U.S., but I grew up in Kenya, then went back to the U.S. So in a way, I'm also sort of questioning.
In between worlds.
Yeah, to be in between those two worlds and how they talk with each other. But at the same time, though, how I wrote Nairobi Heat was actually accidental, because what happened was I had come home late at night. I lived at Madison, Wisconsin, which was a big party town, the university. So I get to the top floor of my apartment. I lived on the third floor. And there was this white woman dressed in a cheerleader outfit who had just passed out. She had gone drinking out somewhere, then she got lost, because I didn't know her, right? Then she had gotten lost, and she was passed out. So then I called the police, right? Because, well, because I was concerned. Exactly. Yeah, so there are many. So there's that as well. Yeah.
Racial relations.
So I called the police, but the policeman who came was African American. So at some point, I'm just standing there, right? Where there's a white woman who is passed out, and then there's an African American or a Black American policeman, and then there's me, an African. Then that becomes the plot of Nairobi Heat. So I don't know. So I can say I don't know for sure if I would have got into crime fiction, except for that particular incident. Maybe I'd have written something different, because politically and imaginatively, I wanted to pay that debt. But Nairobi Heat, I consider it a found novel, because I wouldn't have, like that's a thought. I wouldn't have imagined that, right, by myself, except for that. For
experience that informed that.
Yeah.
You're also a poet, right? And your poetry, whether it's from the Hauling Words at Consciousness to your latter works, they carry both tenderness and fire. And I do have to ask, what role does poetry play in your intellectual or emotional life that your prose carry, or your prose cannot carry?
So for poetry, really, for me, the poetry is questions I can't answer, right? Okay, for example, the story is when they were hanging, I have a poem about Ken Saro-Wiwa, yes, right? But when they were hanging him, the story is that they tried 3 times to hang him until finally they succeeded, and that his last words were, "What have I done?" Like, you know what I mean? It's you know what I mean? But that's not something you can answer in a scholarly essay or in a novel, right? I think that's a poetry that you can only answer through poetry. Okay, the Rwandan genocide, books have been written about it. There's Mahabud Mandani's When Victims Become Killers, right? But still there's a question there of how people who have lived next to each other for generations, right? How one day I can wake up and go and murder my neighbor, even though we are childhood friends, even though I know the family, and so on and so on and so forth. And so I think Yeah, so I think there are some questions that only poetry can answer.
Right.
But then also love. I mean, love is complicated, right? You know, so like love is a question as well, right? You know, why do we fall in love? Why do we fall in love with the people we meet?
Why do we fall out of it?
And and why do we fall out of it?
Why do you have to keep working at it?
And, okay, yeah, why do you have to keep working at it? It was a fun book to write, but also I would say imaginatively painful, because when I was writing it, I'm also feeling the loss, because I'm asking the question.
You're losing the richness of what African literature ought to be, losing those other parts.
Yeah, so hopefully, okay, can I say this actually? I think anybody who is teaching African literature today, and they start with Achebe, I call it from Achebe to Adichie, from A to A, right? Alphabetically, you haven't gone very far, right? It's just A to A. But I don't think, in the same way doctors have an oath, do not do any harm. I think for us as teachers, we also shouldn't, we cannot keep doing the same harm, right? So I would say to all the teachers out there who are teaching African literature, please just begin with the longer tradition, because it's there, right? It exists. Like, why? It would be one thing if it didn't exist, right? But it's there. So why do we keep? I don't know. Like, why do we keep? Truncating our imaginations. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish we could continue, but we're pretty much out of time. But I cannot let you go without you doing the tradition that we normally do here. It's called the rapid fire question segment. But also, I dubbed it Humor Judith Game Show. All right, so I just fire you rapid fire questions, and then you have to answer immediately without thinking.
But you're not going to ask me about being a Nepo. What was it, Nepo baby? Okay.
Oh, look, let's get to that. But what if I not throw in Nepo baby or Lapo baby? Do you know what Lapo baby is?
No.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. There's Lapo baby as well.
So if you're from the Midlands is where it's more. The Midlands and Nairobi is the high borough. So the Westlands is like, lower middle class. So if you're there, it's presumed that you must have gone to get like thrift loans and stuff. So that's the difference between a Nepo baby who grew up and Lapo baby. So you get it now.
No, I get it.
But very quickly, Lagos jollof or Nairobi nyama choma? I hope I got that correctly. Nyama choma, is that right?
Definitely nyama choma.
You cannot even say jollof. Nigerian Lagos jollof.
Well, no, I'm enjoying it.
But you tried jollof rice?
Yeah, no, I have, yeah.
What's your favorite food so far?
No, I would actually say it's the jollof rice.
It's jollof rice?
Yeah, but that's a tough question. It's either nyama choma or jollof rice. Okay, how about both? Actually, this is where we talk about innovation. We could do both, actually. Don't
let Lagosians or Nigerians hear you about blending the originals.
But I know, like in Nigeria, you cannot make fun of jollof rice.
No, you can't. That's our holy grail. That's our biggest export. Danfo Boss or Okada, which would you dare to ride just for the story?
Danfo Boss.
See? I said you're a Nepo baby. So the Danfo Boss is the yellow and black bus, as you see. Have you been on a BRT?
No, I haven't.
Have you been in a Kurukwe?
No.
So you haven't had the full Lagos experience yet?
Well, okay, let's blame. Okay, I guess I'm joking though, but let's blame the people who invited me.
Fela Kuti or Burna Boy, whose music would you put while writing?
No, Fela Kuti without that. That's an easy one.
Burna Boy is my birthday mate. July 2nd.
Well, yeah, you have that connection,
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but for me, I went to see.
For Celebration?
No, not for Celebration, but I went to see Winston Marsalis. And I met some of, what's his name, Made Kuti.
Yeah,
because he opened for Winston Marsalis. So, but Fela Kuti, okay, so you know what, like in Kenya, we didn't know Fela Kuti was Nigerian. We thought he was Kenyan.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like that. Yeah, like what lady or she goes say. Yeah, like we never thought he was. At least for me, I did not think he's Nigerian, right? Yeah, I thought he was just a Kenyan musician. So definitely Fela.
Oh, definitely Fela. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Lagos traffic jam or writer's block? Which is more frustrating, or rather, which have you been in? Have you been in Lagos traffic jam before?
Slightly.
Slightly.
Yeah, but
which is more excruciatingly painful?
I'd rather take. That's a tough one, actually. Yeah, but anyway, I'd rather the traffic jam.
Your father or any other founding African literature fathers, whose library would you rate? Whose personal library would you rate?
Well, so because I've raided my father's already, right? Because I went to exile, we'll just go chill in his office and read. No, I would love to raid Shoyinka's library.
If Lagos was a novel, would it be crime fiction, satire, or magical realism?
It will be magical realism, crime fiction.
No, you have to pick one.
Oh, okay, magical realism.
Magical realism.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. 3 words to describe Lagos in your first 48 hours visiting.
Beautiful, at home, and I don't want to leave.
Yeah, well, neither do we want to let you go. Mukoma, I must say thank you for taking the time to join us today. This has been amazing, also revealing, and a dream come true for me as well. I am Judith Atibi. Thank you for joining us on Literati. Until next time, I always say, keep reading. Bye for now.